the cross-functional operational layer of a business within finance, legal, HR, sales, marketing. There's a layer of work there. Doesn't matter what company it is, that is work that internal team members shouldn't be doing for obvious reasons, especially efficiency. And it's work that AI either can't or shouldn't do yet. That's the work that we are targeting. And the way that we identify that work, prepare that work to be transitioned, and then develop our talent is very unique to us. Malawi will start to be known for is I can go to Malawi to be able to get leverage, get growth leverage through working with this amazing talent.
Hi there, I'm Denise Chaffin, and I'm your podcast host for Talking TA. And today I have with me Seth Stover, and he is the founder and CEO of a very interesting company called Tide Rise. You and I had a very fascinating conversation, and I thought it was worth sharing on our podcast for Talking TA. So, do me a favor, introduce yourself, give me a little bit about your background, and give all of us watching, a little bit about your background, and also let's talk about and jump into Tide Rise and what made you get this business started.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks for having me on. Quick background on myself. I born and raised in Southern Ontario, Canada, a farm boy, still at my roots, and professionally was involved in a Canadian startup when I joined called Flip, F-L-I-P-P, back in 2009, and had the privilege of being a part of an incredible team there. We scaled during my time there. We scaled the company from 6 of us to 550 of us, and the concept of Tide Rise actually came from Flip, which is very special to all of us because the team running Tide Rise right now is the same team that was a part of building Flip. So that's a little bit on that front. I currently live in Manitoba, Canada. So we call that the heartland of Canada, just above North Dakota. Not many people get to say they live north of North Dakota, but I do. And I live here with my wife, Renee, and my two boys, Eli and Callum, who are 10 years old and 5 years old. And we live in a small little town in the middle of the prairies, and we love it. So that's a little bit about me.
I think that's fabulous too that you get to live north of North Dakota. Yeah, yeah.
Right?
There are
Not
not
everyone
many
gets to
people who
say
get to
that.
say that.
Yeah, exactly.
So winter's a coming, my friend.
It's a coming. Yeah, it's still 82 degrees here today though, and we're gonna hang on to that.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about what made you start Tide Rise? I mean, what was the impetus for this company to launch?
The impetus first was a person, and I'll reference his name a few times today. His name is Wee Hunts, and Wee Hunts was one of the founders of Flip. He was my boss at Flip. He was the CEO, and Wee Hunts had friends, childhood friends actually, who ran an orphanage in southern Malawi. I'll give quick background on Malawi for I think some people have heard of Malawi a little bit. Many people have no idea where it is. So Malawi is in Southeast Africa, 2 countries above South Africa. It is a small little landlocked country. It has approximately 22 million people. It's typically considered the third poorest country in the world. It has approximately an 80% unemployment rate. Now, for those listening who want to fact check me and Google it, they're going to see about a 6% unemployment rate. And this is because the government includes subsistence farming in the unemployment rate. And this is actually very interesting for me to learn. When you go there, you realize that subsistence farming, labeled as employment, equals someone in their straw mud hut home with a 15-foot by 15-foot plot of corn in the back. They label that as employment. That corn is just there to feed their family and sustain them. And so when you remove that as employment, the unemployment rate in this country is about 80%. So you get the picture. There's not a lot of opportunity in this nation. This nation, though, has some of the happiest people I've ever been around. They have the most incredible smiles. Education, we'll get into more of this a little bit later, but lots of good education, ambitious. And so we Hunts had these friends who ran an orphanage in southern Malawi. They're Canadians. And so he used to visit them every few years in Malawi. He supported the orphanage financially for many years. And on one of the trips there, he asked his friend David, who was the executive director of the orphanage, he asked him a good entrepreneur question, which was, what are your biggest challenges? Besides us just donating, what are your biggest challenges? Where can we help? And thankfully, David answered that question very honestly, because a typical answer could have been, no, no, we Hunts, you make lots of money, just give more money, we'll figure out what to do. But he answered the question and he said, you asked about my biggest challenges. Our biggest challenges are opportunity. It doesn't matter how good of a job we do at this orphanage in raising these incredible youth, educating them, building skills, competencies, confidence, so on. In a country like Malawi, majority of the time, when they age out of that orphanage, you're going to watch those people walk back into generational poverty strictly because of the lack of access to opportunity. So he said, I don't know what you can do about it, but that's my biggest challenge. And thankfully, David asked that question, and thankfully, We Hunts asked that question. Thankfully, David answered it honestly. And when We Hunts heard that, and this is typical for him, he went into problem solving mode. And it was, okay, what can we do about this? And the first thing he knew that had to be done was validating whether there could be a model within this country. And so at this point, this is in 2016, we had approximately 500 people at Flip in our Toronto office. We outsourced to teams in India and the Philippines. That was approximately 300 to 400 people. And so his thought was, what if we take a small piece of that current outsourcing off, carve a piece of that off? Let's bring it to Malawi and just to validate, could there be a model here? And that little validation project grew in a span of 12 months from 5 Malawians to 90 supporting the Flip operations. And that was when he first called me. I had left Flip in 2017, and he called me and said, hey, there's a model here. The unit economics are excellent, which is critical for the model to work. The quality of the work is great. And we're seeing signs of transformation. We're seeing when these people have access to sustainable employment over time, they can buy a home. They can support their grandparents and parents in that home. That home might be modest, no paint, no power at the beginning, but it's a home and they can support family members in there. They start paying for the tuition of their siblings who never had the opportunity to be educated before. Typically in Malawi, if any children are educated, 1 out of 5, typical size, would be educated. Well, when they have access to this opportunity, they actually start paying for the tuition of their siblings to also get educated. So the amount of impact that can happen when someone is given the opportunity for employment to produce, to so on, is so much greater than just giving. Giving is still required as well, but we're seeing that the impact when they're given the opportunity to employment is just so much greater. So he called me in 2017 and said, there's a model here. We have to figure out a way to scale this. And that was the beginning of Tide Rise. We talked about the idea of taking that concept and building a company around it, which is Tide Rise, and scaling it. So that's the origins.
That is such a great story. Thank you. How about the name? Where do you get the name from?
I was reading a book, and a chapter of the book was called, like we've all heard many times, "A Rising Tide Lifts All Boats." And I thought about that in the context of what we were doing and thought, yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do here, is lift the tide for everyone involved. And when I say everyone, and this is where I think it works so well, it truly is everyone. It's lifting the tide for the people in Malawi. It's lifting the tide for our clients all around the world. And when everyone involved can actually go up together, it's the typical cliche, win, 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 but everyone has more fun doing it. It's more effective. It's sustainable. So yeah, that's the idea behind the name.
So we spoke a couple weeks ago. We were talking about global talent. And because I asked you at the time, describe for me the difference between working with the Malawi residents versus, like you mentioned a while ago, the Philippines or even Malaysia or India, where a lot of companies outsource some of their work to. So let's talk about how does Malawi then fit into that structure? And let's talk about to the global talent aspect of it.
Sure. Yeah, it's very early for Malawi. So to clearly define how Malawi would fit in with some of the major centers like in India or Philippines or so on would be tricky. But I can speak to the fact that I think part of the reason some of those hubs are the way they are is because of the early days, the type of work that companies were bringing there. And so, even to today, some of the major global regions have strong suits in certain areas. Customer support, Philippines is a wonderful fit in many ways there. India is a fit in many different areas, but especially technology and developers now because of the level of talent that you have there, also customer support, so on. So as far as what the focus will end up being for Malawi, that's kind of hard to say at this point because we're the first ones doing it in the country. But so far, the operational that the cross-functional operational layer of a business within finance, legal, HR, sales, marketing, there's a layer of work there. Doesn't matter what company it is, that is work that internal team members shouldn't be doing for obvious reasons, especially efficiency. And it's work that AI either can't or shouldn't do yet. We can have a whole conversation on that. But that's the work that we are targeting. And the way that we identify that work, prepare that work to be transitioned, and then develop our talent is very unique to us, but hopefully is something that Malawi will start to be known for is I can go to Malawi to be able to get leverage, get growth leverage through working with this amazing talent. So that's sort of answered your question, but yeah,
How many people do you have working currently in Malawi?
about 100 right now, and we're really just getting started. Our target is 5,000. There's no very specific reason for 5,000, just in that if we're at that level, then we're making some big impact.
And who are your clients?
So in the first few years, we were heavily reliant on our own networks. The few of us who run Tybrise have wonderful networks. It's something I'm very thankful about coming out of that flip season. So that's originally where the first set of customers came from. We leverage LinkedIn heavily at this point, both on the warm and the cold side, and with great success on both sides, strictly because on the warm side, it's because these are people that are in our network and they love what we're doing and they want to be a part of it. On the cold side, these are people that we have no idea who they are, but it's very interesting to see from the human connection point when someone responds to some sort of a request or message from Tybrise, they're responding because they are intrigued about the mission. They hear the opportunity to be a part of something that does drive incredible business results, but is also just making the world better in that way. And they're opting in to say, I want to learn more. I want to be a part of this. So we're seeing really good success on that side as well and looking at scaling both of them.
Does the Gates Foundation know about you guys yet?
I don't think so. I think we gotta figure that out. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, look what he's done. So what you guys are doing is just absolutely phenomenal. It's heartwarming. It really is. The thought that I mean, because we are diversifying our workforces globally. And it's not just that we are outsourcing work from the United States. When you talk to companies who have a global presence anyway, they're always looking for new opportunities to advance their products, their manufacturing, their R&D into other countries. It's just something I think that globally that we're all leaning towards more and more because we're such a global society now. So let's talk about work segmentation. We're talking about, and you mentioned it a few minutes ago at the beginning of our conversation, when we're looking at hiring people, let's say in Malawi, and let's say I'm a company that is totally intrigued with your business and your mission. What positions could I look at outsourcing to Malawi through Tiderise? Because I mean, obviously, since it's just starting, what are some of the key areas right now that the Malawians are qualified to take on?
Great question. And for the sake of this conversation, I might turn this a little bit on its head for how we typically think about it, because exactly what you just said, we're very used to thinking about what roles, right? Can I fulfill with these people or this country? And I think this is where the conversation starts to bring in access to global talent, like we just talked about, and AI into the same conversation when we talk about work segmentation. So what do I mean by that? When people are thinking about how to leverage AI right now, which is a burning topic for everybody, or how to leverage global talent, what we're seeing needs to happen up front before those conversations is, have we truly segmented our work to understand, do we have the right people doing the right work and the right systems doing the right work? And it's not often the case. And that's why we I think sometimes get caught in this cycle of, where do I find these roles, versus breaking the work down into responsibilities and saying who and what fulfills these responsibilities. So a big part of what we're doing with our clients is really just spending time in a segmentation matrix, a very simple one, where from side to side, you've got work that is strategic and critical on this side, and work that is operational and execution on this side. Top to bottom, you've got work that requires a high level of trust or has a high level of risk associated with it, and then work at the bottom that doesn't require a high level of trust and doesn't have a high level of risk associated with it. When we start actually looking at work that is required in a role or a team, if we can start plotting the work within that segmentation, that is going to give us a much clearer strategy on, what do I need AI for, first and foremost, and who do I need and why. That work in the top left-hand corner, which is strategic and critical work that requires a high level of trust and has a high level of risk associated with it, that is your internal, most important team members. But when you move over to the operations and execution side, you might not need your internal team members to execute on that type of work. And that's where the conversation shifts to, is this work that AI can do on its own? Is it work that AI can do augmented with human support? Or is it work that AI is not there for yet and I need people to do it, but from an efficiency perspective, not my internal team members? This is where, and you had me thinking about the talent acquisition world before this podcast, and something that came to mind is your world, because that's not my world directly. It hasn't been in the past, but your world, you are almost having to become workforce engineers in some ways, where you might have clients coming to you saying, I need I need this role, and this role. And it's going to become part of your industry's responsibility to say, great, pause. Have you gone through that kind of work segmentation process to truly understand who and what should be doing that work? Because you might not actually need this role, this role, this role, and this role. You might need two of those roles, and AI might be able to do a lot of what's in two of those roles, and you might be able to actually delegate some of those responsibilities to a team like a Tiderise as well, which drives incredible efficiency. So that's what we mean by this work segmentation, and it has been incredibly effective in the conversations with our clients. And of course, it strategically helps us because we're able to help them identify work that they should delegate, but we're also helping them set themselves up for success with AI as well. So,
Aha, but there it is. In fact, that for me, listening to listening to this outline, if you would, of what you guys do, helping companies identify which roles and which responsibilities and which jobs internally that they can either utilize AI for or utilize tide rides for, helping them identify that piece of it is gonna be key initially. So what kind of response are you getting, and how are you able to go in and help these companies to align and to segment the roles that they can move off to either AI or tide rise versus keeping them in-house?
Yeah. It like anything, it depends on the company, it depends on the people, it
Sure.
depends on their appetite for actually digging into this. And so, but we've got a great group of current clients and a lot of clients that once we actually help them see that we want to help them through this process, are very receptive to that. So what it typically looks like is starting with one function of the business. It often would be on the finance side. It could be on the legal side. We have multiple clients where we have paralegal support in Malawi supporting their legal team. But the first thing we did was go through the process with their in-house legal team to say, before you just go and hire another lawyer, let's look at all the work that you and the other two in-house lawyers do, and let's go through this segmentation process. And as we go through that with them, and we've actually built a work mapping tool that we provide to our clients, and it allows their employees to self-identify this work. That's been a big part of actually helping them with this. But it allows them to these lawyers to say, well, when I really look at everything that I do, there's 20% here that I would coin as operations and execution, but still requires high trust and has risk associated to it.
Mhm.
That's the work that we identify. And we say, we're going to delegate that 20% across three different lawyers over to our paralegal team in Malawi. Well, they just created capacity within the three of them that's almost equal to another whole lawyer. So that's
Isn't
kind of
that
the mechanism that we use to help them go through this. And as a result of this, the one term that I've used a few times around AI is I look at it as in some ways it's the great level up,
Mm.
because whether it's those lawyers or anybody else, and the segmentation process helps us look at this, it's forcing all of us to say, I need to focus my time up to the things that are strategic and critical and remove everything else off. And when I say remove, then make the decision on what can AI do or what can be delegated to other teams. And so, and then the great level up then is also our teams in Malawi, because now they have access to that work, which allows them to level up as well. So there's a lot of conversation around AI right now about the benefits and the risks and all of that, and those still hold true. But ultimately, I think it's a great opportunity for all of us as a really good level up.
What kind of a brick and mortar and facility are you running in Malawi?
So it's just outside of the capital city of Malawi, which is called Lilongwe. Fun little fact with Lilongwe, I think it's projected to be the 13th largest city in the world by 20, I think it was 2040 or 2045, something like this. And when you start looking at the growth rates of a lot of these African nations and cities, it's incredible. So Lilongwe is a great city, a lot of young talent that we're tapped directly into, especially at the universities. And so, yeah, we have a building that we moved into 5 years ago that was a year old. So if you came, which you should come someday, Denise, with us, and you can meet the team and see the site and see the country, it would feel very similar to a North American building. We have a Malawian leadership team that resembles what a North American leadership team would look like. We're a head of operations, head of IT, head of finance, so on. And internet and power in this brick and mortar building is extremely good. That does not reflect what it's like in the country, though. So power reliability is not good in that country. They have blackouts daily. And so our head of operations and also co-founder Brad Workington from the very beginning set the standard with our team to say internet and power for Tide Rise will be what French fries are to McDonald's, where McDonald's never. You will never hear them say, "We ran out of French fries, sorry." And so he has set up an incredible power infrastructure where we're on grid for part of the day, and then battery inverter systems, and then diesel generators if those ever run out, and it just keeps going. And then internet. There's multiple Starlink connections, fiber connections, all going into load balancing routers. And we've had 99.99% uptime on both power and internet for many years. So kudos to Brad on that setup.
How would you compare and again, I'm thinking about our audience and our audience that is utilizing resources outside the US and other countries and talking about a comparison at this point in time on effectiveness because some of these other countries like you had mentioned earlier are already set up, right? And you've got this huge infrastructure like in India and the Philippines and Malaysia. So these big infrastructures already set up. And since Tiderise is still relatively new, you said 2017 is when you started?
2018.
18. So still 5, 6, 7, 7 years. It's a pretty long time. So how would you compare the efficiency right now, even though you guys are smaller and you're still kind of getting going, with some of the other bigger firms in other countries?
Yeah, comparing to those other markets, that's a good question. So part of that will come down to scale. So how much scale is required? We already can scale up and down very effectively, but we're not going to have the scale just because of both the size of the country and how much of this is actually happening in Malawi that say India is going to have or the Philippines is going to have. So you're going to see you're going to see a lot of Fortune 500 companies who they're going to work with the big consulting firms to help them with work segmentation, like we talked about earlier. That's a lot of what the big consulting firms are doing. And then access to massive groups of talent through those big consulting firms. Everybody else outside of Fortune 500, that's very difficult for them to access, both the strategy side around work segmentation and global talent that is very easy for them to access and leverage. And so that's why a big part of our focus is more of that SMB world. We have clients with anywhere from 20 employees up to 900 employees. So I think that would be the best way to look at it is it does depend on the scale of the company. But as far as access to the amount of talent, we have access to tens of thousands of people who are ready to work, many of them already coming through the university system with a degree.
And my next question, and again, I'm speaking like almost as a prospective client.
Yes.
So let's say that I want to outsource some of my operational and execution work that I don't need to do, and I'm not ready for AI because there is some risk there, and I'm just not ready to turn it this particular type of work. And legal is a perfect one, or any kind of accounting, maybe even accounting. Some of those roles as well, payroll, maybe some IT positions, that type of thing. So if I'm going to transition over to Tyrise, and as the company is growing, how are we going to grow with it as your clients? In other words, once you get to that 5,000, how are you going to sustain your clients and be able to keep up with the growth of the company, especially with respect to the infrastructure, location, that type of thing? Have you guys confronted that yet?
The amount of talent we have access to in Malawi means we've got a ton of runway within that country. That said, if we're getting up to that level of scale, we already have a list of other countries where people from those countries have come to us and said, bring your model to our country. We'd like to see that. And what's interesting about that is you also then start to open up opportunities for different culture work fits, sometimes even language. There's certain limitations with language in just one country. So we've been very focused on not expanding too quickly to another country because we want to ensure that what we have within Malawi is foundational and sustainable. Um, but when we get to that point, that will be the point that to continue to sustain the growth that we have, we'll probably start opening this model up in other countries. You gave some really good examples there. Accounting is a great example. Payroll, accounts payable, legal, we've already talked about. HR, for the sake of this conversation, has been a recent one. Think of all of the, especially for a high growth company, think of all of the HRIS workflows that happen within an HR team system. So employee onboarding workflows, all of the things that have to happen when an employee is first onboarded. employee offboarding, payroll workflows. So those have been some recent areas that clients have said, we want our current team in-house to be the strategic oversight and leadership for HR, but we need to get the execution of these workflows, daily workflows, off of their plates. And so they delegate that to Tiderise. Now, what that process looks like, we've spent a lot of time on making really easy. It's like anything. We know we have to make this easy for it to work well. And so once work has been identified, once a workflow has been identified or a process that they want to delegate, all we need from the client is a video. We need a video of the person who currently does that work actually doing the work and narrating it. That video is sent to us. We've built a standard operating procedure generation system. So that video goes through that system, and the output is a ISO compliant standard operating procedure that we provide back to the client as their own IP, which I'll just say as a side note, that knowledge base that builds up starts to be AI readiness, because it's going to be those documents that are fed into an AI at some point to help train the AI model to do that work. But for now, we generate the standard operating procedures. We use those SOPs to train our Malawian team members and for ongoing quality benchmarking. And that's what allows us to ensure that the quality level is at or above what it was when that work was done internally. We can never have it that when someone thinks about leveraging global talent, they have to think, am I going to have a drop in quality? It needs to be, I'm going to have the same quality or higher than what I had internally. And us being involved in the standard operating procedure process ensures that.
To take a step back, so before that happens, you had mentioned candidate map or client mapping.
Work mapping.
Work mapping. So on the work mapping, are you basically then having your clients rewrite their own job description for the roles that they might want to carve up and realign with their current team and that work that they can push off then and outsource to Malawi?
Yeah, they might rework their job descriptions. That's totally up to them. But the tool that we're providing for them gives them the capability to, or the visibility into that, the executive insight into that. So it allows them to give this tool to either a team or a person. The right messaging has to go with that to say the reason that we're giving you this tool is so that we can create capacity for you to do more of the strategic critical things that you were hired to do and that you want to do. But we know there is a layer of work that you are currently doing that we have to get off your plate first. So when that tool is then given to that person, they're going to document with the tool everything that they spend their time on. Because the executive question is, what does my team spend their time on? And is it the right things that they should be spending their time on? Once that's all documented, as they're documenting those different processes and workflows that they spend all of their time on, they are tagging each of those by type. So is this strategic? Is it operational? Is it internal meetings, external meetings, so on? Then they're tagging it by engagement. Do I love doing this work? Do I hate doing this work? Am I indifferent about it? It sounds so simple, but that creates this map by role or by team where we can then focus in on that one segment of low engagement and say, okay, now workflow by workflow, process by process, what are our three options? Can AI do it? Does it need to be redistributed within our internal teams? Job descriptions modified, to your point. Or is it something that should be delegated? Income Tiderise. Let's transfer this and delegate it to Tiderise.
I would think that basically recreating a position description, like say I've been with the company 5 years and I came into the organization on my skills matching the initial position description that they had open at the time. But when I look at my role now and what I'm doing, does what I'm doing now match the position description that I
Right.
was hired for?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yep.
I think
Yep.
that is a key factor, huge key factor.
I don't know if what this also aligns with is, I don't know if you've ever read the book 10X is Easier Than 2X
No.
by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Ben Hardy. The whole concept of that book is removing the 80% of work that you do so you can spend 100% of your time on the 20% that actually drives growth. And it's a fascinating book to show sort of the frameworks of how to go about that. But that bleeds right into our model to say, d- we want to help identify that work, whether it is 80% or 50% or 20%, whatever it is. But we want to help identify that work that shouldn't be on this person or this team's plate based on expectations of growth or retention or capacity, efficiency, and then provide the strategy to say, where does that work go? And now this person can level up with that capacity into doing more of the work that they want to do.
Let's talk about language barrier.
Yes.
How well do the people in Malawi speak and communicate in English first, not just verbally, but also with email?
Yeah, good question. So very good on both sides. There may be on the written side, there's certain cultural just differences that can be modified and improved with basic training. Verbally, excellent. So the reason for this is I believe, don't quote me on this, but about 40 years ago, the Malawi's president Banda at that point, who's sort of considered kind of one of the fathers of the country, he had the foresight to look ahead to, I would say, a time like now, and know that if Malawi had a hope of starting to be on the global stage as far as connecting its people to other countries and other businesses, that they would need to speak English. And so while he was president, he transitioned the entire education system from their native language to English. So for close to 40 years now, you've got right from elementary through to university, the whole education system being in English. And that's why they speak excellent English.
I know a lot of people, like in South Africa, speak with a British accent. Do they speak with a British accent?
No, it's still their own accent based on their native language called Chichewa. And there's a whole bunch of different dialects of Chichewa. It's a beautiful language. It's so fun to listen to. But yeah, they've got their own accent. We've had clients in the past where we'll even just send a recording when they're still processing what this opportunity looks like. We'll send a recording or get a few of our staff on a call just so they can hear it. And what I love is that you see their faces light up right away because, like I said earlier, these people have the best smiles. They're very happy, and it just even having our clients meet them for the first time, I think gets them excited about. I get excited to work with these. This is fighting against the stigmas that we've had for so long. On is there really like talent in such a poor country? Oh man, so much talent, and sometimes just meeting and engaging with them one time is what I think helps all of us as humans say, oh yeah, this is another educated human. They just are on the other side of the world, but they can do incredible work.
So let's compare cost because that's something, of course, as a prospective client. What are the costs associated with working with Tide Rise and the Malawians versus what we've been doing in some of the other countries that we've outsourced work to?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to vary based on scope of the work or what type of work it is. Other variables are going to be complexity of the work, education required, but generally speaking, compared to some of the other major global areas that companies have been used to leveraging global talent from, we're seeing upwards of 30-40% savings compared to those areas. And then, of course, compared to onshore, like much, much greater than that. But again, yeah, that depends on, is it basic data entry? Is it paralegal and finance support? But sometimes on that side, we're actually seeing some of the greatest savings.
That's great. Talk about paying it forward. This is a huge pay it forward. It really is.
Yeah, and you know what? You're right. And I think what's the reason we love it so much, when I say we, it's the our North American leadership team, is we love business. We love building Flip. We love scaling the business. And this is that just incredible intersection of building a business and bringing incredible business results to clients, which is just so fun while impacting people's lives. It's one of those rare intersection of those two incredible things. Often it's something where we can do good to impact people's lives, or we can drive incredible business results. But when you can find that strategy that brings those two together, oh man, you gotta run. And that's what we're doing.
This is great. Great information. Again, too, people can catch you on LinkedIn. Your company is tidrise.io for
Yes,
your website information. You're based in Canada, and working with the US, of course, is no problem, working with US clients.
absolutely.
So this is great. This is a great way to connect all of us. I think that what you guys are doing is fabulous. It
Thank you.
really is.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah, definitely. All right, Seth, thank you so much.
Thanks, Denise.